So I'm David Drake. I'm so glad that you kind of decided to come and join us. I'm joined today by Jen Pearson, one of our soon-to-be graduates, who's going to be our host for today. So you're more than welcome to use the chat box for anything that if you want to post a reflection or a question, that Jen will sort of help take care of that and help us get organized when we move to a breakout room. So for today, we're going to talk to you a little bit about our Five Maturities and the Lighten Your Load program, answer any questions that you have about them that would be helpful to you. And we're going to give you a short and a somewhat longer practice to give you a taste of what the program feels like. Um, okay. So to get us started, I'm just really curious if there's anything you'd like to share in terms of what brought you here. What intrigued you? What interested you? What would you like from today that would be meaningful for you?
Um, Good morning from New Zealand, everybody. Um, I've been thinking about the five maturities for quite a while, and I
Mm,
think and applying them broader than coaching, just in
hmm.
to development. And in my case, where I am right now in my life, very indigenous context and very so weaving very different knowledge systems.
Hmm.
So I work between business schools and indigenous systems, but I'm just thinking about whether this is right for me, and there is
Okay,
a time and a cost element
sure.
to that. So it's just is this the right thing for me at this point in time for my maturity, not just
Okay,
as a coach but as a learning leader.
okay. Yeah. So just on that note, so one of the things we'll do in this 6-week series, as well as the 6-month series we start in January, is really encourage you at the start of the program to help identify what would you like to focus on while you're here, and to invite people to get clarity about either a significant relationship, a significant opportunity, a significant fork in the road, so that we're going through the reflections and conversations about the maturities in service of something that's important to you to discern or to decide. Um, yeah. Hmm. How about others? Anybody else want to check in? Oh, good. All right. So if things come along or come up for you, please just feel free to raise your hand, chime in, put it in the chat, whatever works best for you. Um, so I'm just going to put these up here for a second. There we go. Um, so one of the things that's important about this work is that we're not going to teach you the five maturities. We'll do some of that in next year, but again, the purpose of the five maturities is to frame the reflections and conversations that you most need for yourself. And so we see these more as retreats than as classes. You probably will learn some great things along the way, but that's not really our focus in some ways. It's more about where do you need to mature yourself right now to be successful in whatever you're pursuing at this moment in time. So this will meet for 6 weeks. We'll have one session every week. It's sort of an intensive, but it allows you to kind of track what you're working on so that each maturity that we address kind of builds on what comes before it. Um, So I'm just going to let you read this. This is a place to start. You'll hear enough of my voice today, but just let you read this sort of a bit about the five maturities, and then we'll do a quick practice about the maturities themselves. But this is sort of why we're doing this. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So one of the distinctions we make is it's a move away from a focus on sort of competent implementation to more sort of courageous improvisation. And with that, I think is coming a time when most masterful practitioners are no longer working in any single silo or box, but are working as the fullest version of themselves, drawing from all their background and the communities they belong to be able to kind of bring a more systemic, holistic approach to whatever they're doing. Um, and so the maturities is really what makes that way of thinking and possible. And so what we'll do is in the 6 week series, the first of the 6 weeks is really just an introduction around some experiences of what are the five maturities, how you might use them for yourself, what you might most want to focus on in the series so that you can have a really tangible outcome in the end. And then each of the five subsequent weeks focuses on one of the maturity mastery combinations and asking you to kind of take a deeper look at the scenario you're working on so that by the time you get to the end, you will have had six um, perspectives on the same question that you started with. And hopefully then we'll yield from that two things. One is much more clarity and confidence about what to do with your issue, but also now some attention to what areas do you feel really strongly mature around this issue and what might you be missing that you might want to pay attention to. So some of the weeks will seem more sort of supportive for you, but it's an area where you already feel pretty strong. And some of the weeks might seem quite eye-opening and quite challenging because it might expose a blind spot or maybe a over-attachment to a certain way of thinking, but it's all in service of what you've decided is important for you as sort of the focus for this series. Um, so again, as we go along, feel free to ask any questions or make any comments you'd like. But I want to just come back to this is a photo um, of a graphic I found on the web, and I've actually been in correspondence with the woman that painted this. I liked it so much. Um, and on the right are, I've matched that to the five masteries, which is the words in blue, and the five maturities, which are in black. And there's sort of each of these, obviously, it's a gestalt in us. You can't, this is not to say that there's neat divisions within ourselves. This is more to help us decide where to focus our energy. But I found that each of these masteries seem to have a particular dependency or benefit from one of the maturities. And we know competency is the one that's most dominant in most of our professions. We think of it as the essence of professional development and assessment. But for me, I never saw that as being very relevant or accurate. And so I originally started by creating what's before and after the mastery of competency. And then when I thought more and more about the research I've done for myself and all that I read, I realized from all my years of teaching, like in universities and whatnot, and in exec ed programs, that we've spent so much energy on our
Um,
fantasies about mastery
mm,
that we didn't spend
maybe
enough time helping people mature enough to
who are
actually be
covering
able to use
one
those
issue.
skills well.
And so they're going to have 6 weeks.
So can somebody mute themselves, wherever that noise is coming from? It could be the computer for all I know, but um, so, and I want to map it to this graphic, and I'm actually going to guide you through this in a minute. But again, the premise is that each of these creates a dimension of understanding a scenario, um, and then looking at how might I need to develop myself to be able to handle that scenario more effectively. So let's imagine that you're a coach and you have a client that maybe just suddenly and unexpectedly lost their job, or maybe their partner just died. And the path you've been on in coaching them it now has a detour because they've had this major life event. And you start to feel as they sort of share with you their emotions, their experiences, you're starting to suddenly become aware that you're feeling very uncomfortable. One of the ways the five maturities might help you is around your own personal maturity to reflect on what is my personal capacity to be with grief. So if you've never processed, like I grew up in a family where my parents never shed any tears when their parents died and never talked about their parents when they died. So one of the promises I made when I was a small child was I'm never going to do that when I get older. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go find ways to help people have those conversations. So I feel like I'm quite adept and have a lot of capacity around holding space for difficulty. But if you encounter a client and you realize, oh, I'm not comfortable. I mean, I have so much anger at my divorce, or I have so much sadness around a favorite relative who passed away that I've never really dealt with, you're not going to be very effective for that client. It doesn't matter how many books you've read on death and dying or how many skills or tools you think you have, it's going to be much more difficult and much more costly to hold the space for them to do that. So part of again, the whole premise behind this work is to help us realize where do I already feel strong and where are some of the gaps in my own maturity and spending more time there for you as a human so that any skills or tools you have or could want to gain now have a much stronger foundation on which to sit. All right. So I'm just going to run through these really quickly and then I'm going to just guide you through a quick practice. So your personal maturity, your capacity is basically what your mindset and sort of what you can access in yourself. Spiritual maturity is really about what you can see and how well you can see what's happening. And this generates the mastery around clarity. When I used to travel the world and do demos and classes on narrative coaching, which is what I'm most known for, a lot of the students were really baffled by not only what I was doing, which felt different, but also how did you know to do that? Like the client never even said that, and yet you asked this really amazing question. And over time, what I started to realize, and I actually would share with them and said, yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, but really the difference is you're looking at the conversation as a coach. You're in the back of your mind, you're wondering, what's the next thing I should do as a coach? I said, I'm never asking myself that question. I'm trying to be as fully present to exactly what's happening, trusting that in the moment, something will arise that gives me some clarity about what I might need to do next. And the reason why you imagine it's going to be difficult for you to do what you saw me do is that you just don't see most of what's actually happening because you're not looking for it. So this one is really huge, and it's one that allows us to shift perspectives. You know, a lot of what creates like better strategies in the midst of conflict is not necessarily skills as much as being willing to let go of your addiction to whatever frame you think is true to see much more about what's actually happening. So it might be you've been so obsessed about yourself and how hurt your feelings are that you don't have any empathy for the person and you just don't see what this might be like for them. So then if we move up, then competency is the one we must know. These are the basic skills to be a functioning professional in whatever domain we're in. But again, what we find is that a lot of coaches just vacuum up endless amounts of information here, thinking that maybe more of that will be helpful. But in reality, what they long for is the same thing our clients long for, is the capability, which is the ability to wisely and successfully use what we know. And what most people are, including ourselves, often are missing is a safe place to practice. There's too much at stake, too much to risk. So even the people that were highly engaged in a workshop, the odds are that of them doing something are actually quite small. Why? Where are they going to practice? They go back and they now have 50 more emails, or they've got four people in their team that are struggling, or a boss that doesn't believe in what they're doing, and so capability becomes the ability to, and the social maturity is really around how well can you read the environment? How well can you adapt to the environment? How well can you learn from the environment so that rather than saying, oh, this competency I have is going to be really helpful here, you're saying, I'm going to be just present and notice what in real time, what might be useful. And then and only then will I maybe use one of my skills or tools, but it's in service of the environment. And then the last one has to do with what I think of as contextual maturity, which means the ability to, in real time, track everything that's happening to the best of our ability so that we can make wise choices. And the credibility has two halves. One half is I now have a deep and felt sense of what's going on and what I'm doing. I can do the work and observe my work at the same time. That if you ask me to explain why I did what I did, or to use a platform that we use a lot called Ovida, when I play this video of you coaching or whatever it is you're doing, you're able to tell me why you did what you did and what you think about that. So you're credible because it's who you are now. But you're also credible because I find this way of working is infinitely more effective than a lot of the things we were traditionally taught to do. So I want to know, is what you're doing credible in the sense that it's more likely than not to be successful? And this is a very quick rundown. That's all the teaching you're going to get today. But I won't. But I want to know if there's anything just in this basic start that would be helpful for you to make this clearer or more relevant for you. Then I want to guide you in a quick practice. So again, you're welcome to put something in the chat box, or you're just happy if you want just to speak up. Hmm. Hmm. Anything happening in our chat box, Jen? Otherwise, we'll move on.
Nope, nothing at the moment.
Okay. Everybody okay? All right. So here's what I'd like you to do. We'll just do just a 5-minute sort of guided practice using this as a way for you to get a feel for what this might actually tangibly look like for you. So I just want to invite you to just close your eyes for a minute and for a few minutes, and then I'll guide you through a quick practice. So as you drop into our practice, you might want to just tend to your breathing and notice how it is. As you breathe, I'd like to invite you to draw your attention to your diaphragm. So many of us hold in our belly and breathe from the top half of our lungs. And I just want you just to see if you can imagine, and you can put your hands there if it would help you, but just to imagine that your diaphragm is relaxing and maybe dropping down into place. And you imagine your breathing emanating from your diaphragm, not from your throat or your lungs. So it should just be relaxed. Just notice if by relaxing this, your body posture changes. Your mind gets a bit quieter. And what I would like you to do from this space is to think back to a recent encounter that in hindsight you wish you had done differently. It could have been an exchange with a client, an argument with a loved one, something you bought that you regretted, anything whereby you think, maybe if I had been more mature in that moment, I might have handled it differently. So as you bring this into your mind's eye, an image of this, perhaps it was somebody you took something they said very personally and lost the ability to hear them. Whatever it is for you, as you reflect on that encounter, what do you wish you'd had access to in yourself? If you had to do this over again and you could draw on anything from yourself, language, gestures, perspectives, what do you wish you'd had the capacity to do at the time? And if you'd had that capacity, what do you imagine that would have helped you to see that you either didn't see at all or saw in a way that was only partial? How would you need to mature yourself from a spiritual perspective to allow you to take that perspective, to rise above or sink below whatever was happening, to see things more completely? And becoming aware of what you now might see in ways you did not before, what would that enable you to do that maybe you either didn't feel confident or strong enough to do before? But what does that new perspective enable you to do as a way maybe to handle the situation differently and maybe even better than you did the first time? And as you think about behaving in a new way, speaking in a new way, what about the environment that you were in when that happened might you want to pay closer attention to? This would enable you to be more capable of using what you know how to do or know more effectively in response to what was actually unfolding. So again, how do you want to relate to the environment and or draw on the environment differently than you might have the first time in order to be more effective? And then finally, I would like you to think about your own credibility. And for this, I would like you to sort of imagine you're like looking down over the encounter again from some of these new perspectives. See if sort of a sentence or a summary comes to mind about what is might be different for you now. But what, if anything, has changed, even if it's just the way you see what's happening? And with that, I'd like you just to imagine, or if you're on mute, you can say it out loud. Just think, what would you be drawn to say now that feels true for you in a way you didn't feel before or didn't see before? So one of the tests of credibility for ourselves and our clients is to invite them to speak to it and see how it rings authentic or not. But what seems true for you now? All right, so we've gone all the way from the roots of your own capacity, all the way up to the flowering of your own credibility. So what I would like you to do now is just come back to the room and just take a couple of minutes to reflect on what you've just done in this 6 minutes. And if you'd like to put a few thoughts in the chat box. And if you feel inspired when you're done writing and you'd like to share any of that, please feel free to do so. Mm. Mm.
David, just noticing a few comments in the chat about noticing old patterns and recognizing that you can now step outside of your own fears. Thanks to Shelley
Yeah.
and Joanna for that.
Mm. Well, people are finishing up. Is anybody else would like to share? Mm. Mm. Yeah. Right. All right. So I'd like to just sort of transition. We'll come back to another practice in the end, but um, I want to just share you a bit about what the program looks like and to see if there are any questions about the experience itself. Mm. Thanks for sharing, Ron. Yeah. Um, yeah. So the whole point of this for me is we live in a time it's really feels challenging, and I want to just invite us to imagine that one of the core purposes of the program is to help you, if nothing else, feel lighter at the end. Um, in the sense that often we over armor ourselves or over prepare ourselves or carry too much. Um, and a lot of what people, to your point, Lenny, in the chat, a lot of people, what they need most is somebody just to walk with them and be present, to help them make sense and meaning of chaos and things that are happening. And a lot of that requires a sense of self-discipline, self-regulation on our part. And so my hope is that we sort of think of this as sort of a house cleaning, if you will. I just am in the process of moving overseas, and it's been astounding, all the stuff I didn't really need. And the more I packed, the less I needed. And so I'm going to think of that the same for you, that what is your life calling you to? What is your practice calling you to? For which the beginning is not to then go acquire more things, but actually to see what you can actually put down. And so I kind of use this image of the butterfly in the sense of like it's light, it's agile, and I just want to have that sensation of lightness. It doesn't always make things easier, but it certainly makes them simpler in the sense of we can be with them. Um, and there's Kate. Cool. Um, all right. So I want to just talk a bit about the program itself. And so this version over these 6 weeks is sort of an intensive, which is great. There'll be 6 live sessions, one each week. These will be primarily, again, just some orientation, but lots of practice and discussion. Again, I want to really have you think of it as a workshop for whatever it is you're working on. There'll be some small group dialogues in pods, which will meet shortly after the main sessions, and this will be an opportunity for you to meet people in your time zone. Um, there'll be some assignments for your small groups, and you're free to completely jettison those and bring up whatever else feels important to you as a group. And there'll be also a kind of a forum space just for participants on our platform. It will allow you to ask questions of me and each other, share your reflections, share your experiments and actions as a way to both not only deepen your connections to each other, but also to the things you're learning in the program. These peer pods will be smaller groups of 4 or 5 people to keep it pretty intimate, and will be a way for you to not only deepen your own insights, but also support the integration of this into whatever it is you're working on for yourself. There'll be a process, but you'll see in a minute you can choose the one that fits your time zone and your schedule. And then something we're doing a bit differently. We normally have a larger handbook for our bigger programs. This will be a much simpler handbook, but it also has the core material and core resources and spaces for journaling. So the core ideas and the space to write, the space to work in your activities will all be in one place, just to kind of give you a sense of the whole journey. And again, as we go, if there's anything that comes up as a question or whatever, just put it in the chat box. So we do this twice. We do the same session twice a day to try to cover the whole world. We've moved our afternoon sessions from 6 to 4 p.m. to help me not have any more midnight classes now that I'm maybe living in Amsterdam. And it still makes it a bit early for the Aussies and Kiwis, but there we go. And then all of them will be recorded. So if you miss one or you want to review one that you really liked, they all will be available to you the next day in a secure environment for this program. And then, like I said, there'll be 8 different time and day options for peer sessions, and you can choose up the one that fits you best. And we'll make sure everybody has something that fits them. These are the 3 dates of our main sessions together, and then there's a FAQ section on our website. The link is here. Jen, if it's possible for you to scrape that and put it in the chat box, that would be great. As a way for you to answer any questions, and there's an email address at the very end if you've got even more questions that those don't answer, that would be helpful to you. I think oh yeah, good. All right. So before we move into our final practice for today, I just want to see if there's any questions about the program itself that would be helpful to you.
I have a quick question, David, if that's okay.
Yes.
I'm curious about, I mean, you talked about bringing in a topic or an area that you want to focus on. Can you give me a sense of like the altitude or the scope of what you imagine people might bring in?
And no, but because I don't know, but I can tell you what I would prefer or what I would suggest
Yeah.
to make it small and concrete. Oftentimes in these kind of invitations, we try to boil the ocean and tackle some lifelong pattern or some big client dilemma. And it's really hard to get your hands around what's the actual developmental opportunity in there. So pick something small. So for example, and it might seem small as to be insignificant, but it's not the solution to or the response to that matters so much as using it as a laboratory for you to look at yourself in the 5 maturities. So for example, if I were doing this, I would pick something someone said to me recently that really bothered me. And at the time I went into kind of a reactive place, and I was able to manage myself to not get in too big of a hole, but I used this on myself and said, what am I missing here? And I realized it boiled all the way back down to my own personal capacity. I realized that I took it personally when in reality she was just stating her preference. And it didn't affect me really in the end. It was just her perspective. And it wasn't intended to insult me or criticize me. It was just a way for her to express a difference. So the ability to kind of self-regulate and realize this is not about me. I shouldn't feel bad about myself or about her. She's expressing a value or a wish. And there's things to be decided about that wish. But if I start from a deficit, like, oh, how dare she say that? Or what is she thinking? Or if she only knew, or all those other things we tell ourselves in those moments, all the rest is moot. So, but then you can say, okay, I think I do that often. I take things too personally. So I might step back and say, I want to just look at that as an example of taking things personally before I stand back. And so then I can walk through all the 5 maturities around that one scenario. Even if it doesn't relate exactly or perfectly, it's pointing to the same pattern. Because that episode was probably, I know it was not the only time that's happened. So pick something that maybe you have a sense, hey, I kind of do this often, or this feels really important to me, this relationship, or maybe there's a client that's really baffling you and doing funny things you don't really understand and think, I really need to understand this client. But don't just think about how do I resolve my relationship with my client? Think of an example when that really bothered you. So then you've got something really tangible to work on and then kind of expand out from there in terms of what it might be saying to you, in terms of where you might want to mature yourself.
So are you saying like literally you're looking at one particular interaction that may have
Yes,
taken 1 minute and we're going to spend 6 weeks on it?
exactly. Because,
Okay.
and don't pick some outlier that just like one thing that happened once that was, you know, pick something, go, yeah, I kind of do that, don't I?
Mhm.
And I just found, as I've gotten worked in this space a lot, and what we teach now, and I'm working with a major client as a vendor of ours, really just trying to make the process of change much simpler and much focused. Most of us barely have the bandwidth to get through our day, let alone remember the 27 priorities we set for ourselves. So pick one and really just sit with it. And what you'll find in this work is that a lot of what will be most significant is not even visible to you yet. It lives in mystery. And so I find just spiraling. I was really influenced as a longtime student of Jung. The introduction to his final book was written by a guy who said basically, if you try to go right at Jung, you'll get confused. He writes in circles. So go in circles. And he had this beautiful image. He said, sometimes he doesn't make any sense, and you just have to keep circling above the tree, and you go, oh, that's what he was saying. And sometimes he gets in all these details. You've got to descend and land on a branch and just sit there and go, ooh, I see that now. And so a lot of this work is that each of these maturities is a circle around the tree and see what you see and what you notice and what you feel um I find again escaping out of the linear approach that most of our society is organized around to think in more going back to what you were saying, Joanna, having spent a lot of time with the Aboriginal communities in Australia, moving into much more circular thinking because that's how the world actually is put together. The world does not operate in straight lines. Um, so does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Excellent. Anybody else want to share anything? Okay. All right. So now we're going to do our other practice. Um, so, so I'm going to invite you just to, in a minute, just spend a few minutes for yourself and just sit with this question. If you want to take some notes, you can, but it's not necessary. I'm using this because I think my experience, it reveals a lot. But oftentimes when we look up to somebody or we admire somebody or the person that you're going to choose here, sometimes they might have literal things that they offer you, say as a mentor, but oftentimes it's more indirect things that they offer you because they inspire you. You admire them. You might wish you were more like them. Um, and so as I move through my 60s, I'm really intrigued by artists and musicians and thinkers who are now in their 70s and 80s. Like, how do they stay so fresh and alive? And so again, I wanted to do this will be an example of the kind of thing that we'll do as a way through the course of forming and telling this story to observe what is it I'm really longing for or yearning for? What is that saying to me in terms of what I'm hoping it will offer me around my own maturity? Um, and so you might be surprised who shows up here. So my invitation is just sit with the question. About who you would spend the day with and just see what rings true for you and who you might want to spend some time reflecting on. When you get in your group, which will mostly hopefully be pairs, just to sit with it for a few minutes and then take turns sharing who this person is and then use these questions You can adapt them, you can ignore them. If there's other questions you want to answer, please do. It's mostly just sit with, imagine this person is right across from you. How does that feel? What are you looking for from them? What are you hoping that they'll talk to you about? Um, and then just see as you close out your sharing, what that says to you about your own quest for maturity at this stage in your life and your practice. Okay? Are there any questions about the assignment? All right. So Jen, how are we doing with the groups?
We are ready to go. Just remind me how long you'd like the groups to be together for.
Yeah, I think based on where we're at, I'm thinking 40 minutes.
Great.
So you have as much time to luxuriate in talking about this person as you would like. And it's your dream, so you can have them do or say whatever you'd like. Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Well, I'm ready
So
whenever you
enjoy,
are.
and off you go. Yeah.
Hey, you guys, how long is this meeting? We were a little surprised by the 40-minute time.
So right now they're scheduled for 90 minutes. We might shorten them going forward, but right now they're
Okay.
90 minutes. So they're over in 5 minutes.
Okay, cool, cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome back. And we've just got a few minutes left, and just want to see if anything feels important to you to share. And my friend's dog is sharing. Hmm.
My partner and I both chose dead people. Now you're muted, David.
I was trying to block out the sound of the dog because this um and what emerged from talking with the two dead people?
I think we're both, I mean, Trina, I won't speak for you. You can speak for yourself, but I think for me it was more like there's no celebrity or guru that I'm interested in talking to because they're all just human people trying to get through the day and they don't need to perform wisdom for me. But I'm interested in talking to like ancestors and knowing why did you make these choices that you made and how did you just keep going through all this adversity?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was interesting to me.
Yeah. I think David
And
is
just
battling with a small dog.
and I guess just following on from that, it was a great time I had with Shelley, and I was interested in a chap who's passed away now, but he was very spiritual, and he could see auras, and gave me a few keys without telling me a lot. And I just thought it would be a night. I've always wondered, how did he know all of those
Hmm.
things? How was he so wise and perceptive? But I also felt connected to, that wisdom. So I just thought it would be nice to
Yeah.
catch up again. But then I thought, well, actually, I'm still connected to that wisdom. So,
Yeah.
mm.
And what did you learn and what did he have to say about that?
Pardon?
What did he have to say when you were talking to him?
All those years ago.
No, even now, if you imagine he were in the room
Oh,
talking to you, what do you think he might say?
keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Hmm. Anything from the rest of you?
Yeah, I would say Ron and I did talk to dead people also. And mine was Carl Jung,
Hmm.
and I just wanted to hear whatever he was going to tell me.
Okay.
Sort of an open question like, what am I missing? What do I need to know? And the concerns that I have were about, letting go.
Hmm.
how hard it is to let go, even though I know better.
Mm.
Let go of um, things that I've been conditioned to believe, let go of habitual ways of interacting and behaving and interpreting and all that. Let go of even, I ideal idealism.
Mhm.
Let go of taking up the burdens of the world.
Yeah.
And I didn't really, um, you know, Ron and I shared our situations in quite in depth and how we're looking at it both internally and externally. And for me, the takeaway is the internal work of letting go.
Mhm.
And some of that is, I've heard you say, David, around identity.
Mm.
If I let go of this, or I'm not defined by that role, then dealing with that empty space, which is both liberating and a little frightening.
Mm. Mm. Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Thank you, Lenny. Ron or Joanne, anything you would like to add?
I am I really enjoyed working with Lenny, and the person I wanted to speak to was also Len Tierney, who was a mentor of mine many years ago, and had. But what I realised was that I maybe I've matured too much in some ways, in that I have matured into a much more mellow person than I needed to be, and
Mm.
maybe a better maturity is for me to deal with some anger a little better,
Mm.
and to not sort of pack it up and put it away, and but to deal with it more systemically, and to allow myself to work with it a
Mm.
different way.
Mm. Sounds like a brilliant insight. Yeah. Your lovely wife will appreciate that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
she might be a little responsible for that maturity, but that's all
It's
right.
it's all right. Yeah. And there is sort of a sense sometimes of maturity as a softening or a rounding out, and maybe it's about sharpening some of your edges and
Yeah,
making them more dramatic and idiosyncratic and
yeah,
provocative.
yeah,
And
yeah,
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 and the beauty of this work for me is that kind of why we're going to do some other things with our programs is I want to be able to find ways without having to create an ideology or anything for people to use more fully what they already know and who they already are, and recognize that even in this short program, each of you will be on a completely different journey. And maybe if you were to stand on the outside, doing opposite things,
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
maturity that's
yeah,
true for you.
yeah,
Uh, yeah.
yeah. Really looking forward to it, David.
Yeah. And to Lenny's point, for me, part of my attraction to identity work all my life, even in college, was just seeing that it's such a foundation for what we choose to do. And I remember a couple of years ago making a fundamental shift, much like you were describing, Lenny, with my family of origin. And I thought, oh, it's gonna be awkward, and I have to learn some new things. And in reality, just shifting my sense of myself and my role in my family, everything else followed from there and changed as a result. So, Joanna, I didn't want to overlook you, and just if you feel you want to share anything, we would welcome hearing that. Otherwise, I'll just make a couple of quick comments about the program itself. All good? Okay, I'm just going to share the screen this quickly. Yeah, so um, there's if you want to sign up for the program, you can do so here. There's also an FAQ section on that web page if you've got more questions. And if you want to just reach out to, oops, thought I put it there. Just reach out to us at MIM Institute, then we can also answer any of the questions that you have. I want to thank Jen for hosting us, and thank you for coming, and hope this has been valuable in itself, and that some of you will come and join us in October for our intensive. All right. Thanks a lot, and have a wonderful day or wherever you are in the world.
Thanks, David.
Thanks.